What's up guys, I'm Robbie, aka Throttle. I'm here in Amsterdam during ADE at the Red Bull Studios and I'm about to show you how I made my new track with Niko The Kid, Piñata. I'm running through a track called Piñata today. It's my collab with a guy, an LA producer called Niko The Kid. We started in LA, I think about July or August. We started at the end of I'd been on a whole Europe run the whole summer. I've been listening to all this sort of Moomba music that was like Piñata was blowing up and all that sort of music in Europe. And when I got over to the States, we both kind of wanted to work on something that worked in Europe and in America. So we came up with this flutey idea and then I guess a month later we had what was Piñata. So I'll start with the flute because I guess the whole track is based around this very, very simple melody. Let me just unfreeze it here. So it's not actually a flute, it's actually made in serum. So this is the flute line. And the serum sounds like that. It's basically just a sine wave with a hell of a lot of noise and then gone through a lot of distortion, basically, is what's making it sound like that. Let me take off everything so you can hear. So the original sound is just broken down into this noise and this sine wave. So it's just that, and then it's running through this vibrato plugin, which is essentially, if you turn it way up, is doing this. So we're just adding a tiny bit of that. Just because it's not a real flute, we're kind of doing everything we can to make it sound real. So that was step one. And then really simple stuff, just like EQ. But it's running through Homicide, which is doing a lot. So we were just kind of screwing around with this for ages. I really, with Homicide, it's just like playing around until something good comes out, which I mean is a lot of my process, but Homicide especially, there's so much weird stuff you can do. So that added a lot, and then just EQ, a lot of OTT. I would normally use Ableton's OTT, but Niko's in Logic, I think, so we use the plugin. But the serum effects is doing a lot here. We use this thing called actually it's not on this one, it's in the actual preset. In serum there's a filter that you can use, a reverb filter, and essentially I don't know exactly what it does, but to me it sounds a lot like if you have a really, really short reverb, like a reverb that's like 0.1 milliseconds or something, and you ram that up to 100, it gives a really cool effect. I've got it on other sounds in the project, so I'll show you more, but essentially that's without it, and that's with it. And you can, in serum, you can change the cutoff, and you get all sorts of, the cutoff on the reverb filter, and you get all sorts of weird. And then you can also, not on this sound, but on other sounds, we've automated the cutoff either by clicking that and then doing it in Ableton's automation, or like automating it using an LFO in serum. But you can come up with all sorts of crazy stuff. It's just great for making sounds just weirder, which is what we needed in this case, because without it, it was just going to sound very, very dry and basic. I'm just using Kickstart for Nicky Ramirez Kickstart for all my sidechain, and then for the reverb, because it's sometimes I'll just smack like a normal reverb on, but since this was the lead, and since it's not like a really EDM-y sound, I guess, and it's not something that naturally cuts way through. Like for example, if I had a massive super saw lead over the drop, I would just smack a normal reverb on, it would be fine. But in this case, whenever I was putting the reverb on, it was really clouding the sound. So what I did is, and I've started doing this a lot more on vocals especially, is I'll duplicate, so I'll make two channels essentially. I'll split it in, rather than just using the dry wet control and the reverb, I'll actually split the I'll have a completely dry channel and then a reverb only channel, and then I'll sidechain the reverb only channel back to the dry signal. So there's no reverb, it's tough to explain. So there's no reverb on the actual, when the flute's playing, it's almost like a dry flute and then you have a wet tail after. I'll show you what I mean. It's easier if I just show you. So if I ramp it way up. So without the sidechain, it's gonna sound like this. And then once you add the sidechain, so I'm sidechaining it back on itself. You get that sort of effect. And basically all it does is make sure the original sound doesn't get lost, but you still have, in the mix, you still have this really reverbed feel. So if I play it in the mix of the whole thing, if I turn this way up. Otherwise you get this. Obviously that's very exaggerated, but that's what it does. It just helps clean up everything, and especially when you have like vocals in there, pads and everything, it's really important for these sort of leads to shine through. And then just delay on that one. So like I mentioned, we kind of did everything we could to make it sound as real as possible. We added the M vibrato, but what we also did is we added little trills in the MIDI. So if you go in here, just essentially what someone would do if they actually played it live. So what we're doing, we're going up a note here. So without it, it sounds like this. Let me take them out. Which sounds like shit now that you've heard the final. And what we've done is, in Serum, we just go down here and we turn the quarter up. And basically that means it's just going to slide between notes. So, the final sounds like this. And if I change the quarter settings, you can really hear it on the first one. But if you change it like this. So it's just about finding the sweet spot here. But this really helped to make it sound live. You can hear there, it kind of ticks back over. And then we kind of copied those settings on. We added all different leads throughout and just copied pretty much those exact settings on everything. Otherwise you get, like if there's one lead that doesn't have these trills in it, it makes the whole thing sound like crap. So there was a big focus on making every lead even like a silent lead. We had to add it on the silent lead and make a silent lead almost sound like a distorted flute, just so it all gelled well together. So we bring in this silent lead here, which you can hear has the trills in there. So that is just this sound. Which is... It's a basic sound, but it's this serum effects that make it sound so amazing. So without all this. And you can hear the serum effects is really doing its magic on this one. Once you add the distortion before it. Oh, what is going on there? So it just adds a bit of that weirdness back in, which is cool. And then OTT is slamming into this, and then with the reverb just way up on this. I mean, like, because the flute was it cut through at this point so much, we just wanted something like really airy to add on top. And we've EQ'd so much out of it. It's not supposed to be. You're not really supposed to notice it at this point. It's supposed to be. It's like the lift halfway through the break. So it's kind of a subconscious thing that kind of just lives in the side of your headphones and lifts the track. So it's subtle, but I think it helps in the breakdowns. We've bounced that to audio. So as far as the leads, that's almost it. We have, in the drop, we bounced the flute down to audio and added some distortion, basically just distortion, I think, and some OTT. But we just wanted to sound a little different in the drop and just punch through it even more. We're using Devasta. It's not doing a hell of a lot, but you can hear the difference here. all it's doing is adding like a little bit of crunch. This is, sorry, it's not doing tons, but it just helps it stick out and sound a little different from the break. The only other leads we have, actually, now before I move on, it's best to explain the drums and stuff in the breakdown. So we kind of went quite I mean, it's quite tribally sounding. So we went a little tribal in the breaks. So the song is obviously insanely percussion and groove based. So what we have in here is, so we got the lead. And then percussion. And then with the shaker, that's essentially everything that's going on there. So, shaker is very, very basic. At this point, the percussion is just, I think it's just like an old Vengeance tom or something. Yeah, it's a Vengeance tom. I don't think I've really done anything to it here. It's just reverb, I think. Again, the same sort of thing with the reverb here that I did on the lead. Basic EQ, but yeah, it's very, very basic. And that laid with that, which makes it cool, is this bass sound, which I have down here. So laid with the tom, it sounds really cool. So the bass is actually just I think a sample that I've chopped up. And usually what I'll do is, I have no idea why I did this in this case. Usually what I do is I'll just distort like an 808 or something for the breakdowns. But in this case, I guess I couldn't get it right. So what I've done is I've actually duplicated the track and distorted one and kind of like filtered and EQ'd the other one just so I could get it to sit right. So the lower one sounds like this. And the higher one is this. So yeah, like I said, usually I'll just do this on the one channel, which usually makes the most sense. But yeah, in this case I couldn't get it right, so I've just distorted it and put it on a new channel. I mean, the low one is essentially the sample as it is. I think all I've done is just change the envelope in here. So the original sound is like this. And I've just chopped it up like so. And Ableton is so good like this because you can shape anything like so easily, which is I don't think that like Niko was, I think, wowed that I could do this. But it's so easy to shape an envelope here. You can drag things out like this, and then I'm very visual when it comes to producing, so it's nice to be able to make it sound like see exactly what I'm doing. Yeah, so with this one I'm just shaping the envelope to be really punchy, because in the breakdown the toms are so short that I wanted the bass to be exactly the same and feel like one with the toms. So this is just like this. I'm adding a bit of this Manny Marroquin, I think that's how you say his name. I use this on every track. I use this deboxy thing here. Basically it pulls kind of that anywhere between 200 to 300 depending on what you select. Because tracks just so easily get muddy, and especially in EDM when you have so much going on. So I use this to scoop out. If I ramp it up, you can hear. I mean, it's not so obvious on this one, but you hear it on the big basses, it just scoops way out in the 200 area. It makes the master, it gives you a lot more space on the master, it makes things sound a lot cleaner. So this higher one, I think I'm just going through Devasta. No, actually, this is just Ableton's Overdrive. So that's the original sound. I've just taken out, I've added a bit of reverb, because when you distort after reverb, you get a really cool sound. Taken out all the low ends and then distorted it. So if I think in this, let me show you this. Yeah, so it really makes a difference distorting after the reverb. That's what you get, and then if the distortion is after the reverb, it sounds more like this. Which in this case is not doing a hell of a lot, but it really helps if you do things like this. distortions before. It's a great way to come up with a lot of weird and wonderful things, because it's kind of when you run into those happy accidents of coming up with crazy sounds. And then I'll often, like, on some weird sounds, I'll just automate the distortion after. Like you can map it to Ableton's macro and that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of crazy things you can do. Like I said, that is basically it for the first breakdown. The only other thing that comes in is this low Hoover sounding bass. I'll come to the horns later, but it's just this bass, which Niko made. We've just bounced it to audio. I think it was Serum. That comes in again in the second breakdown. But yeah, that is it. And we have some atmospheres and stuff coming in over the top, but I'll go through those later. And then into the breakdowns, we originally had like a lot more of a tribal breakdown on this one, and it just wasn't really working at my shows, so we went in and kind of made a more EDM style thing, which I know is a dirty word, but it works in this case, I think. So that is, it's pretty basic. It was kind of one of those cases where it took us ages to know exactly what we wanted. So there's like 50 things laid in here, but there's only like 5 or 6 things that are actually adding to the project. The most important thing is the snare here. It's this big, which I don't know why I've cut it so short, but anyway, it is what it is. So we've got this sound laid with this. I do a lot of this. Again, in Ableton, it's so nice just to, like, the volume automations and everything is so quick and easy to do. So I do this a lot on snares. I'll just do a lot of, I don't even know what you'd call this, making it sound like a marching band, I guess, in this case. Just make it sound more live. This is not sounding live, but by changing the volumes of different snares and accentuating different things, it helps add more groove to the build-ups. So without it, if everything's the same volume, it's too static. So I wanted to accentuate the Moomba feel that comes in the drop, so all I've done is just brought down everything in between that. So it's essentially this, but I've just added these little fills to keep it rolling. Very EDM. So the pitching up is coming from Sound Shifter, which is from Waves, which is just awesome. All I'm doing is, so you can either do a semitone sense, or if you do this, it just gives you, I think, a full octave up or down to automate. So all I have to do is click on this button here. So literally all I'm doing is just click on this and then just automate it in here. Automate up or down. So you can go a full 2 octaves, which is nice in this, but you do get artifacts. So if it's something that's really, really present in the mix, I prefer just to, I mean, on a snare it's different, but if it's like a rise or something, I would usually try to do that within the synth, so you don't get these weird artifacts. On a snare, I think it sounds cool, but yeah, in some cases it becomes a bit much when you're pitching way up. As far as other effects, it's just simple downlifters and stuff. It's bounced to audio, but I'm almost certain this was all just stuff from sample packs. I'm not that much of a purist that I don't use sample packs when it comes to effects and stuff. I mean, some people are, but yeah, I think it's fine to use sample packs for effects, like rises and all that sort of thing. That is basically it, I think, in the build-up. I often, like, build-ups take me way longer than they should. They sound like they take about a minute, but they take me ages. And I think the key to doing it quickly is just having things that are playing different grooves. I think in these build-ups, a lot of the time I'll try, like, in this build-up where it's just like bum 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 bum. Like, too many times I'll just try, like, add 100 things that are playing the same rhythm, and that's often where I get stuck. So I think, yeah, the key for me is just about having, so I have one snare that's straight, and then I have the riser going on the offbeats, and then I might have another riser that's playing quarter notes. Quarter notes, 16th notes. So when I have that, then it starts to sound full. Otherwise, it just starts to sound like a lot of things are clashing, and then it just starts to sound muddy. So yeah, that was, I mean, the key for this one, I guess, was finding the balance between all sorts of things. And I think that main riser, there's two of them. One was one Niko sent me, which was this one. And the other one is one I made, which is similar, but just adds a different texture. So together, they sound like this. But you can see a lot of my processing is very similar on all these sounds. A lot of Valhalla reverb, I think it sounds great. A lot of OTT, probably more than I should, to be honest. But if it sounds cool, it sounds cool. So this was just a basic serum sound. And I've just gone in and automated the pitch through serum in this case. So you just click on the, I don't usually go more than 12, I don't think. Just click on the pitch bend, and then in Ableton you just come over here, which is, it's so easy. You can click anything and then go over here and automate it. So in this case, I'll click the pitch bend and then just drag it how I want. In this case it was straight up, but in the newer versions of Ableton, if you hold down Alt, I think, yeah, if you hold down the Option key, you get this, which allows you to make curved envelopes, which I think existed in a lot of other DAWs, but I think Ableton were kind of late to the party, so it's cool. I mean, on risers I wouldn't use it as much. I'll use it on, if I have like a reverb sweep or something, I think it's cool. Like something that happens like just towards the end of the drop. I do that a lot with, like if I have a reversed cymbal or reversed effects or anything like that, I'll use the curve envelopes all day. So yeah, very basic. Like I've added OTT, which is not doing a hell of a lot, and just Valhalla. So I'm just basically taking all the, you'll know on like a lot of synths you have really shitty sounding high end, like especially with Silence. I'll almost never use a basic Silence patch because the high end is can be so gross. I have to layer it with something else, or what I've been doing recently to make things sound less synthy, I guess, is I'll cut out a lot of the high end that's coming from the plugin direct and then add it back in another way. So in this case, I'm adding it back in with distortion, but you can add it back in with like shimmer plugins, those plugins that kind of add, instead of high end, they add almost noise at the top. Distortion, I mean anything that's gonna ruin the sound in some way, and then we'll add high end back in. This is how it sounds without it, and then with it after. It just sounds nicer, basically. And yeah, a lot of this crap that you want to get rid of is somewhere in here. I mean, there's a lot of like in bad synths, it's a lot of like the 5K, but in this particular one, that was just this that I hated. That is also disgusting there. But yeah, I was just getting rid of this and making it sound nicer in the mix. So that is the build-up, I think. So guys, that's all we've got time for today. If you want to see the rest of the video, make sure you buy the latest edition of Computer Music Mag.